Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. Also, the Gen Z guy here from Central Florida, Professor Peeping Pixel, I guess is what he's calling himself tonight. I'm going by Rob Graced because I'm going to go the Grace Kelly route. And then from the great Midwest, we have Gen X himself, Mr. RDV. And tonight's movie, Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, considered supposed to be one of his best films, one of the best films of all time. A film that most people go, oh, if you know anything about film, you've got to talk about Rear Window. How great it is, how wonderful it is, how it's just a great whole movie about how to learn film and dialogue and characters and color and set pieces and acting and writing and all that stuff that makes you want to punch somebody that pretends to be a film nerd. Where we just talk about it, we don't actually pretend. Gentlemen, I got to sit there and say this. Over the years, I've seen a lot of Hitchcock films, a lot of environments, and Hitchcock himself, like a lot of people from Hollywood, has their own quirks about them. And one of them is with Hitchcock that's very apparent is the way he views women, because I have to tell you, in case you guys didn't know, Pixel, this is scandalous. Grace Kelly, the irony in that name, Grace. Obviously, she had a tragic accident that ended her life, and she married a prince and became a very refined household name, an elegant, classy lady, the one that you're supposed to look at and go, wow, she's gorgeous, she's cultured, she's down to earth, she treats everybody nice. Or as Jimmy Stewart would tell everybody, she was the nicest person on set, nice to everybody and all that. And we might have known somebody in our life like it. But let's just say she got around. She'd probably put Megan Thee Stallion and all the other women that flaunt it now in today's world to to shame, because boy, she really got around. And you know what? We have no problems with that, because on screen, holy cow, was she dynamite to look at, only making like 10, 11, 12 films. Rear Window, I have a major problem with it. I'm going to start off with my initial impressions, go around the horn here, because God forbid I speak something negative and the blasphemy of what would be considered one of the greatest films of all time, and it's this. A lot of people love Jimmy Stewart. I can't stand him. I can't get past the horrible accent and the way he talks. I don't mind him being an older guy and her being a younger woman, or her high society and him average class here, if you want to call it that. While it's a very talkative kind of movie, and it does a great job if you're an adult, really the way they discuss certain things about relationships, and that's a big positive of this film. These two together have zero chemistry to me, are completely unbelievable whatsoever, and they do the movie a bit of a disservice, in my opinion. And I'm gonna go on record by saying that. That being said, I think it's a great film. I do think it's one that should be on everybody's short list to see, because it just is that good in so many technical aspects to it, from the set pieces to a lot of the shots and everything too. It just really set the tone for what other directors and actors would come to do later on. RDV, you and I usually do the action stuff a lot of times on Tuesday nights, and we talk about our themes and what makes a good or bad movie and what's realistic and all that. We haven't talked too much Hitchcock, so give me a brief thought or two on what you thought coming in this film and what you think we should be talking about tonight.
Well, this is the first watch for me.
Okay.
And I gotta say, I enjoyed it from beginning to end. I love the, obviously they're on a stage, sound stage, even though, but the great thing about it though, it doesn't really look like it though, because the way the artistic, the way they did the buildings, the way they had the sets, the only thing it give away that you're on a sound stage is when you see the sky in the back,
Right.
Other than that, though, it's wonderful. It's great, and it's also realistic, because that day and age, I'm not sure if this takes place in New York or where it's supposed to be, but you could, everybody was so packed in, especially in the early years,
Yep.
the 40s, 50s. So you could look around and see your neighbors, what they're doing, and I said that kept it realistic, and like I said, this is a guy, the whole. Before we even get to the whole thing with him in the wheelchair, it's the fact that Grace Kelly brings in as being the woman he's like that's in love with him, but she's the prissy girl. She's the girl. She's the city girl, the valley girl. He's the guy, the realistic, who likes to go getting his hand dirty, and he doesn't see her ever doing that. But yet she's the one's willing to change for that. But what's really great about this is is that she comes around, JC, and once first.
She's willing to get dirty.
Yeah, she's the only, and she gets off on it, bro. As you can tell throughout the movie, she's
That
like
is the
excited.
most Grace Kelly statement I've heard in my entire life.
Yes. like I said, the only flaw in this movie, and I'll point out because the dog,
Yeah,
gets murdered.
we're going to talk about the
Sick
dog.
bastard.
We're going to
Who
talk
cares
about
about the
dog.
wife? You kill a dog, you're going down.
Yeah. And Tim has joined us in the chat, and he's familiar with the film too. As people start piling in here for Hitchcock's Rear Window.
And also, real quickly though, I want to say it. I watched it on Internet Movie Archive.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Pixel, you're the young Gen Z guy or whatever like that. Was this a first watch for you as well?
It was. I also have to say it's archive.
Sorry.
But
I'll say what I want to say. You don't like it? You can say it another way.
I've heard it both ways. No, this was a first watch for me, and I wasn't sure what to expect, but it was brilliant. It, in its very way of making it feel so real. The whole world seems like it is this one little street, this one little corner, and getting a full view of the world, characters that don't even have names, but feel almost iconic at this point. And with that, it's able to have such life in something that shouldn't be. It feels almost wrong in that way. And there are other shows that really, I think, take from this kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? This
English, if preferable.
Yes. I know. There's a word, a specific word, that's able to take this very isolated view and somehow make the world blossom around it. And Hitchcock does that in this film, absolutely. I mean, I love Jimmy Stewart. I do. I really love Jimmy Stewart. So to hear that you hate him, that's
it's not that. It's okay. So let's just kind of set the stage here for what Rear Window should be at this point here in the mid 50s. You know, it's after World War II. We have probably the last big boom industrial wise in the United States. At least that's what a lot of people refer to it as. And we could argue about the politics and economics of the situation, but basically that's considered one of the last really great times here in the United States, except for maybe a brief little flutter in the 80s. And again, brief. And of course, Artie and I discussed that in films because that's a common theme. But I think you both guys hit on something that's really, really important, and that's this. And when we talk about films, we've just gone through in the month of October here on the Xtreme Movie Show, reviewing a lot of different types of horror films, and we intentionally spread it around a little bit. And we talked about how Hammer Horror Films took an idea and they took these beautiful, lush set pieces and beautiful, gorgeous women and flowing robes and stuff, made it very sexy and adult. But basically, it was essentially a glorified set piece that you'd get off of a stage, like, say, Phantom of the Opera, let's say. And then I agree with both you guys that even though you can tell the sky is fake or the way he's shooting some scenes is, okay, kind of looks a little dated by this point. But at the time when it came out, I agree with both you guys. It does such a great job of being a voyeur and peeping and looking at people and telling a story that you don't have enough stuff in the background that's going to unnecessarily draw your attention away. It serves a purpose. And the opening montage where we see the viewpoints on Miss Torso and everybody else going around, that it does set up what the rest of the movie is supposed to be done. So it's smartly filmed that way. There's not a lot of extra meat on the bone, as it were, and I think it goes well. So I think that's something that with Hitchcock and a lot of different films he's had, you could argue, well, oh, this is known for the scene on a train or the steps or this or that or whatever. This is where he's at his strongest for the most part. And I think he does a great job too, like, say, especially with Grace Kelly. You've got to have a template somewhere of what we think class is. And of course, to me, when you talk about like Vertigo, some people say that's his best film, or North by Northwest too. I myself have a preference for To Catch a Thief. I just think that's very elegant, and it's got a lot of things that has her in it too. But she became the standard bearer, the blonde bombshell next door beauty that everybody would hope to attain. She was supposed to be wholesomeness and goodiness. And in here, you know, I'll go back to you, RDV. You talked about her being like Miss Priss. I didn't get that vibe from her because they have a big, lengthy discussion because she wants to get married. He doesn't. He wants to just have things stay as they are. So modern man today would say he loses his frame. because he's watching all these people go through these different stages of relationships. And there's just a certain whininess because of the way he talks that I can't stand Jimmy Stewart. I don't hate him. I like him, but it's annoying and it's distracting.
The reason, that's the first impression I get from her, because that's what he sets her up as he's talking to his nurse. And then you see her bringing in the dinner she had, obviously she's rich. And he's a
but she did it herself.
Yeah.
She didn't go order takeout,
No, yes, but she had it's the thing. Normal people don't do that. So I said, so I was kind of like, okay, is she forcing herself on him? Does she want to change him? But then as you start talking, she starts talking to him. They have a conversation. It changes. My viewpoint changes. But the original viewpoint of it, is the way he sets it up, and you can kind of see that because with the dress she comes in, it's a French dress, and it's very like
elegant.
Elegant, yeah, it is.
It's not flashy, and it's not prudish, and it's not whorish. She does great at class.
Yes. But I'm saying, so my first impression with her was she came off flaunty rich girl, privileged. Yeah. Where he's kind of the guy is like he's saying like sometimes I don't bathe for a week or two. It's like, and so I almost. And it's funny, they bring up something like that because it takes me back to the African Queen, Humphrey Bogart, and the girl, and Audrey Hepburn. Mm-hmm. It was that exact same thing. So I'm picturing these two doing stuff together later on. But overall, though, the story is just awesome. The fact that Perry Mason is the murderer is awesome too. Raymond Burr, man,
Godzilla hunter.
And I first saw him, he looked like a young, or I guess he looked like a Harold Ramis' father. If you look at him, seeing Harold Ramis, after he put on some weight.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, you see it
with the glasses.
Yes. I kept thinking this is Egon Spengler's dad. But overall,
Egon Strangler.
Strangler, yes. No, yes, but so commenting on what you talked about, you guys, especially you and Pixel. Everyone that he sees watches around has a part in there. Even the woman down below, he sees her. There's a part where he's like. He gets to see a window to the world. And most people don't do that. And the fact he's a photographer, I kept thinking, as he's watching around, especially when he's watching this guy, Raymond Burr, he thinks instead of taking photos for evidence, he just looks at the camera. He must be really broke. He doesn't have any film. But overall, though, like I said, it's a very enjoyable movie. Way better than West Side Story. Don't need no musicals. Just the little things in here. You see the kids are running on chasing the water truck, because it's hot. They keep showing the thermometer, the mercury thermometer. As it goes up, it's 80, 85. So you see back then, that how things were different. Even later on, they show again in the alleyway. They see the kids getting ice cream, like the little things like that. It's just like I didn't really need to be in the movie, but I guess that was common back then. So every single angle you see, even looking through the lens, it is cool because we've seen stuff like this before with Dark Passage.
Yes.
So, and that's one of the reasons why I think this movie also stands out too. I've seen North by Northwest. That was my first Hitchcock movie. And then coming to see this, it just reminds me that I need to watch more Hitchcock. Pretty much. Right. But overall, Jimmy Stewart, I can get past his accent, bro. It doesn't really bother as much.
I understand. No,
what bothers me is when he takes his shirt off and he's all flabby.
Well, I mean, that was back then, though. Here's the thing, you had a lot of people not really to show Miss Torso and the way she was there dancing around there was almost scandalous at that time because the amount of skin being shown, and so this was kind of cutting edge. And Hitchcock, I think, did a very tasteful job in doing that because you've got, to your point, him looking at all these people and he's putting on them what he thinks he sees, and a lot of their discussions has to do with the state of their current relationship, which does make this film talky and wordy, but also very good if you're paying attention to that part rather than just the murder.
Yeah, I love how Grace Kelly basically comes in and she gives them a different point of view. It's like you see Miss Torso over there. She doesn't love either one of those wives because, and I love it how they kind of brings it back. Their little conversations, everyone, even the woman down below, she's lonely, so you're talking to herself. Yep. Later on, they see the sleeping pills, but then she hears the guy upstairs who's playing the music up there. You know, he's basically a struggling musician.
Mhm.
You know, like it stops her from taking the sleeping pills. You know, it's just like every character in the story, whether they're a side character or not, has a purpose.
Yes.
They're not just thrown in there as extras.
Yes.
And that's what makes it better than most movies today.
I agree. And Pixel, transitioning over to here for some thoughts. One of the things that RDV said that reminded me of what comment you just had, I wanted to bring up is that, like, you know, when you talk about watching movies, you know, RDV and I did a review of a movie that has been dubbed the greatest Hitchcock film that Hitchcock never made. And of course, that would be Body Double, which for us is, you know, a very popular review. And it's kind of tongue in cheek because it plays off of this movie and others. But you had mentioned too before about with the film how there's just certain things about it that you really like. And I know you're a bit more of a Stewart fan than I am. But what did you like more about this film? Did you like more about the story between those two, or did you like more about the murder and the cinematography part?
I think that I think the story itself and the way that it's told is what that involves, obviously, the cinematography, how it's shot, how we're seeing the world from this single apartment. It's a very it's a great way to tell it, and I think that Stewart and Kelly, I think they both actually do gain some chemistry. I know you said you don't feel it at all. I think as the movie goes on,
Agreed.
Yeah,
That's the point. I think too. It's intentional.
yeah, because he's trying to worm his way out of it, but as he's stuck and she keeps coming over, he gets whittled down and finally breaks. And as the murder comes together, because there are serious times when you doubt that there's a murder.
Yes.
They go ahead and just swipe this off over here. Oh, that is just misunderstood. You don't know. And with what we're seeing from this single, we have a long lens camera. Other than that, what do you have? You have nothing but glimpses into windows.
Nothing but trouble, as Selma says.
That's right. That's right. I almost expected this movie to end up with a cynical kind of view. I thought that the lady was going to prove to be right. Oh, it was just good fun. I can see you in court now. Something like that.
Let me say this and see what you guys think, because because I just watched it yesterday, and it's been a while since I'd seen it, a good long time actually. And the last time I saw it was in the dinner theater here in Central Florida, and it was beautiful to see on screen, the colors and everything, and it was very tasteful. The thing this sounds like I'm shitting on about both of these two is that, like, you know, we talk about knowing what roles are, and here in the United States post World War II, you've got this very classical nuclear family type situation, which I would argue is diminished since then. But here you have a woman that is completely, for lack of however you want to call this, she is the catch. She's beautiful, she's graceful, she's elegant.
As Stella points out too.
But she's
Perfect.
not whorish or prudish. And the problem I have with Jimmy Stewart is okay, I get, for purposes of the movie, being a photographer and being an adventurer. I don't know if you think, you're living a slum life or you're a high-end one. It was really kind of hard to tell. I think you're supposed to be pretty good. But it's one of those things where I look at her and I go, wait a minute, she would have no line of suitors, and it's not like she's slumming. I didn't get that vibe. She proved, just based on her acting and just the way she carried herself, to be like that. And I just go, here's an older the guy that would recognize a younger one like that would be an ideal catch. So why are you such a pussy? Why? And the whole setup at the beginning just seems so unbelievable. That RDV, you brought up the point earlier about how once she kind of gets off on the dangerous stuff like that, kind of flips his button about it. I go, wow, Hitchcock, was she just nothing more than eye candy? Because to me, she came across as a very competent, strong woman. And then Pixel, I'll say this, and I'll let you guys go at it. You and I did a brief talk about the state of James Bond movies up to the movie Moonraker, because next week when we do our full review of it, there's a lot to dissect. And one of the issues you and I have had is that they've had really shitty, weak women, or they've made fun of the women for the most part. And the movies are always lesser when they do that. And then here I thought, wow, she's the one. I don't even want to watch him, sit with the stupid broken leg, act like a wimp ass bitch, and everyone, like the lady's taking care of him. She's basically saying, hey, you're a dumbass. she's a catch, go marry her, because she's the voice of experience, you know, the age of wisdom. And then you've got his buddy that's the detective, who's a smart guy, that's like, man, what the fuck are you waiting on with her? Get on that. And it's like, Stuart, you're not an idiot, your character. And it just, that's the whole unbelievable part that makes me go, I don't even want to focus on him talking. I want to focus on him spying on everybody, because him being hopeless in there is really good. But to me, honestly, despite Raymond Burr and the whole dog thing, which I know already you wanted to talk about, I think Grace Kelly runs the movie. I think she's the beginning, middle, and end of this film. Without her in it, this is not that good of a movie.
Yeah, no, but I think a lot of that is a part of a mixture. We need her, yes, but I think Stewart's great in it. The cop who tries to constantly just poo-poo on his story. I think every actor in this is great, even the ones that don't even get to really talk.
I was gonna say this. The cop actually upholds the law. Jimmy's sorry, you can't just go in his, and I think when he's there, and it's like, that's unconstitutional. You need to get.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I love that. I love that. It's like, and it was no big secret that Jimmy was, you know, left leaning political wise. So it's like, yeah, take that, bastard.
Stop. But no, the police were more militant back then, and certainly
a lot of them came from the war
that way, right?
Yeah, they came from the war, and then they went into the police force. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so I said overall, like I said, the one thing I didn't understand is like the dog though. She's like lowering it on the thing, the basket. I'm thinking like, you're taking a chance that the dog's not going to jump out.
I will say this.
That's training. Good training.
Well, it looks good on a set piece in the movie. Look, in real life, there's a lot of bad dog owners, and the old expression is there's no such thing as bad dogs, but bad owners. And I will say this, I've seen plenty of dogs, you know, on motorcycles, on mopeds. You go to overseas in Asian countries, you see that specifically. And of course, a lot of countries fight them, eat them. Here in the South, you get the occasional story about a fighting ring and stuff like that. I of course, big time dog lover, as everybody knows. And so to me, I when I saw that dog on there, I was like, I know it's a movie. I know it's probably secure in there. I just didn't want to see it. Maybe that's just my, you know, protection radar going off too. But the point is in RDV, I'm handing this back to you because I think it's a very legitimate point about the dog. If you're going to have a bad guy or murder mystery, isn't it pretty bad when we see the chick laughing at him and he basically roughs her up and we think he murders her? Because to your point, we don't necessarily know that he does. Of course, it happens. But we feel more evil about him because of how he treated the dog.
It's the dog, and we assume because the narrative is focusing on this guy, and the fact you see him sitting in the dark smoking a cigarette. Normally people don't do that.
Yeah, that's a good shot.
Great shot. I kept thinking of Eric Breen. He turns his camera off. He's just sitting in the couch just smoking.
Easy Eric Breen smoking one up. Absolutely. Hot summer night.
No, my question is, you got to put a lot of faith in that dog to go as you lure him down, that he's going to go back in the basket when you want him to come up. When he's down doing his business. And like,
it looked like some sort of terrier. They would do that.
Yeah.
It reminds me of.
But how lazy are you? You can't walk down the stairs with a leash.
Well, I mean, aren't they the couple that sleep right there on the what's it called?
Maybe I guess they were the ones that sleep on their mattress on their balcony. And it rains. I was like, that's movie, and that's I want to point about that. Bringing that up too. I'm glad you brought that up about those people. This movie is a thriller, mystery, suspense, you know, and you know there are some stuff, but it was really dark until you see that all of a sudden that these people are sleeping on the couch on their little mattress. Even he gets a chuckle at first, but then he sees them again in the rain. It's like, I just threw me off for a second. It's like they're throwing some like humor into this, you know?
Yeah.
Because there was subtle humor in the beginning with Stella, his nurse, you know, and or him when he has to scratch his leg. He's got the old-fashioned back scratcher.
Yeah.
Like there was some humor, but not normally. I wouldn't expect that from a movie because it's well, because I knew from going into this, I've seen The Simpsons where Bart broke his leg and he's watching, you know, he sees Flanders preparing something. So it's like I've seen all different like homages, I guess, or whatever you could call it, and it was interesting to see they actually go back and watch the original source. So like I said, I wasn't expecting the little humor, like the most I was expecting this movie could be a thriller suspense about maybe someone murdering their wife or burying him under the flowers or whatever. It's just like I expected, just no humor except for like maybe Stella's part, his nurse. That's it. But to have the people up on the balcony, I mean, like, it just shows you that back then there are weirdos, and they're making a thing like because she always says like you're gonna get arrested. I can because you're Peeping Tom. And I'm thinking like he's perfectly fine, and then he gets the binoculars, and then he gets the zoom camera. But
Yeah.
the only flaw with this movie is the fact that him trying to prove that this guy is acting shady. He had the camera. He could have took photos at certain times and to show him, hey, this guy's doing this. Unless he's afraid of a flash.
Well, it feels, I get your point. That's a bright light there in a dark room, if so to speak. But Pixel, to me, you and I have talked about shots, not too technical or whatever like that. We've talked about, like RD and I have talked about crash zooms and certain things, and
drinking down
recently,
shots, taking them down, shooting them
there's
back.
a great shot of the lady who was kind of like suicidal, kind of rehearsing, about having her husband or some, a suitor come over, as you want to call it. And they keep showing like the car driving by and the kids, quote unquote, playing in the alleyway where you could see across the street, and just a little shot there. And you see her over there in the bar. And then, of course, that's a similar shot that we see of Grace Kelly and there too, like looking up at him and other things. So those are really great, wonderful looking shots there too. But, after having seen this for the very first time and all that, do you look back on it and go, it's not that scary, or it's kind of silly? Because I think it's a thriller, but it's not very deep. Does that make sense?
I don't know if I would completely agree with that. I think that as a thriller, it does its job. It's surprisingly lighter than I would expect, admittedly,
Right.
especially from Hitchcock. But I think that's a part of the charm, and it's surprising that there is charm, and I am very, very happy with this movie. I'm very glad that we decided to do this, and next week score 2, which won't be of this standard, but it's going to be.
Kelly's in Gore too, if you didn't notice.
No,
The Monaco disaster. Yeah, that's the subtitle. Okay.
I think it does its job as a thriller. I was genuinely scared for Jimmy Stewart at the end when Harold Ramis Sr. came over and was almost tossing him out the window,
He's trying to cross the streams. Don't do that.
He's trying to bloody the street.
I'll say this because the one thing that really struck me here, and I just typed in chat there, is about Thelma, the masseuse or whatever, the caretaker. As a young person, I wouldn't have paid any attention to her dialogue and her role. I just figured, okay, adults talking, blah, blah, blah. What's he watching, right? And so I always love the voyeuristic stuff out of it, because I think we're all voyeurs, and film by itself, it's more about the watching of the film rather than all the dialogue and all that stuff, or shots that you're like, okay, here's the slow motion shot where everybody walks side by side with each other, which I can't fucking stand. Or one of the other worst shots of all time is the one where somebody's dying and you take your hand, you rub it over their eyelids to close it. It's like, really? Fucking really? So I give Stewart credit for in here, even though I talk about his voice a little bit like that. He generally seems to have a sense of, like an everyman, which is what Hitchcock wants. He wants to put somebody in danger that you don't normally get into and see how respond. And that's relatable. So Stewart's always had that kind of thing about him. But for me, when I look at this film and I look at the roles and all that, I think that's really what Hitchcock's disguising it as a thriller, because Grace Kelly's got some incredible lines in here about stuff. And, RDV, you'd mentioned the line earlier about when Miss Torso, gorgeous woman, incredible body, she danced around all that and all those guys over there, and she's like, she doesn't love any of them and all that, and they kind of go back and forth. And of course, he's being a bit of a dick to her because he's a pussy and doesn't want to commit. And he says something along the lines of like, well, how do you know, or something. It's just like what you would have going on at your place. Somebody, she goes, no, because I don't have any men at my house. And women are never direct, so she's basically telling you, no, you dumbass, I love you, and I'm a woman, I can know the differences, and you're not listening to me. And so I just felt like she just went overboard, not in a desperate sort of way, but I thought a woman that good of a catch that the Grace Kelly portrays her, there's no way in hell she'd stick with Stuart because he's a dipshit.
She gets sense he's a coward.
Exactly.
And he's pushing her away, and like, it's just like she's like, hey, like, and I'll she's like, she says, what did she, not goodbye, what did she say? When she left after the fight, she didn't say, it said, not good, not see you later, but she said goodbye. And like, and he kind of freaked out a little bit. He's like, wait a minute, I'm not gonna see you again. Like, can we just stay status quo? I'm like, who says, like, can't we just stay friends? Do we, or stay dating? It's like,
there's definitely a way to have that kind of conversation in a relationship, but the point is their timing wasn't on point, and that's what almost makes it unbelievable. So it's surprising to me that maybe, whether you call it boredom or not, she ends up getting involved in all this, which I'm going, really? I don't know. I mean, it kind of makes sense, but that was the issue that I had with it too. But that being said, it's more interesting to watch the film from that perspective than the murder. I think the murder is the weakest part.
You see, she thinks he just has such a way with words.
Thelma Ritter, though, at the very beginning, though, when she says, I'm like, it's like, what happened to when you two people fell in love? They just get married. Now you guys just psychoanalyze each other and just do research and all that stuff. It's like, it's ridiculous, and that can still be said today,
even more so. Yes.
Yeah. It's like especially with the pension, the prenup. It's like, if you don't trust the person, don't get married. Things happen. I understand that, but it's like, it's people over analyze everything. Just, she's like, what happened to people who are free spirited? It's just, this jumped in, the joy of it. And you can see that later in this, you see that he's not the kind of to jump into things, really, as he's more cautious. As you see, well, Grace Kelly is like, at their agenda. She's the lover that Thelma Ritter was talking about. She's the one who's like, just wants to go jump in. She's like, and then see where it takes him. She's the outgoing. Said he's become the recluse. And then I said, like, I love towards the end, like, she basically, like, just opens up to him, and she says, like, you said, people, you don't believe people can't change, and this, like, and he just kind of avoids the question, and she proves that hey, I love you, no matter if you're poor, wherever you're working, I don't care. I just want to be with you. And that's what, dude, anybody wants that. I mean, it sounds good on paper, but that's what we want, though. So the fact that he didn't want to do it, he's losing it. it's like I said, like, woman brought me 20 from 21 restaurant 21 an expensive dinner, had it in a cab, did this for me, and she's here, and then she's gonna stay the night over. It's like, why would you turn that down for food?
She was an elegant host. His friend came over, and so part of me goes, you could argue that the opposite applies, where Raymond Burr whacks his wife because he's doting on her. She's sick in bed or something, and he's bringing her food. And she starts laughing at him or whatever that's supposed to be, and you're like, bitch, you're gonna laugh at me, I'm gonna put you down. You don't respect me, boom, it's over. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of like, this is what he could Jimmy Stewart could turn to. Of course, he's a coward, doesn't want to live in the real world because he's so used to watching the real world go by rather than live in it. And that's the real standout part, that you're like, well, wait a minute, Grace Kelly has to be the one to carry this movie and tell him that just was different.
I thought Raymond Burr's wife in this, the one that gets murdered, I thought that she was like being slowly poisoned by him at first, because you always hear about those cases where they poison the spouse one soup at a time. But, go ahead.
That reminds me of something I wanted to touch upon. We talked about him earlier, just killing the dog. He hated that dog. He always hated that dog. And
you know what I thought when I saw the dog? It's true, dogs can't sense evil. Because it's so true.
That's part of just how evil this man is. He gets rid of his wife, and everything's explained, easy peasy, done. And then suddenly it seems like they might be giving up, and when something, I can't remember the exact thing that happens. I saw it a few days ago. So, but they watch across the way, and they realize something. The dog's there, it's dead on the ground, and he's just sitting there. Everyone else is freaked out. And the way, we don't even get to see him. It's just the lit cigarette in the distance.
You know what it is? The guy's
so devious.
The guy's
I love it.
He's a cat lover.
Two totally different types of owners, that's for sure. And that's not a slight on either one. No, I will say this from my final thoughts. I mean, we can take as long as we need to finish up here. But for me, I do think it's, in terms of the film, I think it's a great watch. It's very entertaining. It's classic because it survives mainly on focusing on the human condition and relationships between us two. And I think Grace Kelly does such a bang-up job. And, you know, at the beginning, it sounded like I was shitting on her personally, and I wasn't. I was just pointing out the fact that, you know, even as much in the 80s when you had some older starlets, you know, get older and pass away and things happen. You know, we talked about actually Natalie Wood briefly and her tragic so-called demise at the end that made me never look at the heart-to-heart ever the same way again. You get somebody like her that got around, and really I could say, well, she was no different than anybody else on how she progressed her career. But you know what? I can argue that on screen, she's very good. And you know what? We may have all come across, you know, a person or two in life that's very beautiful, very gracious, whatever. And you're like, you know what? I really don't care how they treat other people necessarily because I don't see it. I don't hear about it. I just know how they treat me. And I look at Jimmy Stewart in this movie and I'm like, God damn you, Jimmy Stewart. Why are you such an idiot? This woman is the catch for you. And the whole movie is about it. So as an adult, you catch a lot of stuff that maybe when you're younger and you're artsy fartsy going, oh, it's Hitchcock. Therefore, you know, it's going to be a cinematographic masterpiece. And you start watching, you're like, oh, this is a great shot. That's great. But films aren't made that way for the most part.
I do have a theory though, why he was why he was reluctant, because he's getting older and he doesn't want to settle down. He wants to still prove himself that I can go around and do stuff. And he's been feeling sorry for himself. Like,
I'm going to say that the movie, while yes, we recognize that Jimmy Stewart is quite older than Grace Kelly here.
Yes.
In the movie, they don't act like that. They act like he's still in the prime of his life, and that he's going around. So.
No, Thelma right at the beginning, she says, you're getting older. It's like, you're an old man. Pretty much, she says, you got the gray hair and stuff. It's like, you might as well just settle down.
Yeah, it's time. And people married younger then too, so
Of course.
you know, it wasn't like he had a second wind or
And
so.
she
Where
was
I
marrying,
feel like it.
she was the breadwinner. She was marrying for love. You know,
Yeah.
she said, I could be like Miss Torso and have any of those wolf guys over and be, you know, but I don't want that.
And I do want to, justice for Miss Torso. She was going out. Yes, she was going out. She was having fun. She never she let people come over. She had plenty of suitors who wanted her, but she just wanted her little shrimpy guy to come home from the war.
That's very cynical though too, because you know what I'm saying. It's like, oh, I'll have three guys and I'll sit around in my room while I do a little kissy with one here and this and that. It's like if I was that husband, I'd be like, what's going on? So I thought that was not really even humorous there too. Any other final thoughts, RDV?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, Pixel, since this is your first watch, final thoughts. Close us out. I hear somebody buzzing.
Me too. That's I just go ahead and say,
Pixel, I think that's you.
What's happening?
I can't hear you. It's
One
my interference. Yeah.
I just want to go ahead and finish up and say that I think this is a fantastic film. It was well.
Oh, your Wi-Fi's crap now. We can't even hear you now, Pixel.
And he is gone.
Yeah, he
He
is.
loved it so much he had to leave and watch it again.
He's buried in the flower section next to the dog.
if you've never seen this movie, go check it out. You can watch it for free, or you can, on the Internet Movie Archive, or you can pay $4 for Vudu or through Amazon Prime. I'm sure you could probably find it. Actually, last time I saw it on Blu-ray at Best Buy.
Yeah.
So,
it's one of those films where now transition in November, December, we like to cover a few classic films and other ones too. So obviously getting out of the Halloween mode and into the fall season, we like to go back and take a look at some throwbacks, because movies like this we reference later on, like on our Tuesday shows when we've talked about Body Double and a few others. So you go, oh, kind of start from here. How did they improve upon it? Disturbia is a nice kind of, I think, honest sort of remake in a sort of way, if you want to talk about that's modified for the modern times. I thought it was decent. Certainly not as classic as this one here too, but it's a great watch. I agree with you, RDV, totally on that too. So yeah, looking forward to talking more Hitchcock and other films. So again, if you guys have any particular ones that you'd like us to review, let us know. We'll give it the extreme treatment. Tuesday night, we're doing mostly action adventure type stuff, RDV and I primarily. Next week, 6 p.m. Eastern, Pixel and I will be doing the full review of Moonraker. We just did a quick analysis of where the Bond films were up to that point, because Moonraker is that divisive of a movie. So check that out here too. I can't wait to get into that. It's going to be a first watch for Pixel, and that's going to be very, very interesting. It's probably the 100th watch for me on Moonraker. It's just that kind of a film. RDV, Tuesday night, what do we have going on?
I'm not sure what's going on, but Eric Breen is saying Rope. I've heard of that movie.
Rope. Well, Eric, we will check that out, and if you're available, perhaps we'll get on that too. So yeah. All right, guys. Hey, thank you all for showing up. Thanks for getting the word out about us and tweeting everybody know what's going on for it. When we get something decided, we're trying to do that to get a lot more conversation going here and chat. It's definitely working here. We've gotten a lot of newer people and a lot more comments coming. I think it's great. It's pretty awesome. And RDV, I gotta say, with all the different Halloween ones too, it was kind of surprising. Some of the ones that would hit, some of them that wouldn't. Same thing about Hitchcock. You never know, but Rear Windows, one of those classics. Everybody keeps going back.
Okay, so Rope is another Jimmy Stewart movie at 1948. So we'll look that up and check it out.
Yeah, no shortage of movies and stuff to forward to. Yeah, we've had some technical difficulties here in Central Florida. It was in the mid to high 80s, and Pixel's here in Central Florida as well too. So something's going on there with his Wi-Fi. I've had some storms up here where I'm at. So that being said, you guys have a good night. Enjoy it. Check out Rear Window. Let us know what you want to see, and we'll see you Tuesday night, 7 p.m. For everybody involved, have a good night, and as always, stay extreme.
Good night, guys.